And so the first point that I would like to make in this retreat, perhaps of, let's say, paradigmatic scope, is my hope that everyone will let go of their paranoid theories of why this is happening. Unless we drop paranoia, which literally means to be out of your mind, out of your right mind, unless you drop the conspiracy theories that everyone seems to be so attached to and convinced by, unless we do that, we will not be able to see and understand the truth that the one who runs this world is God. It's not run by billionaires or political elites or deep states or any of the other theoretical rulers, whether they're Freemasons or Kabbalists or Illuminati or whatever else people are choosing to believe in. And it's not aliens, and it's not any of the other options that people have. And so it will be of most help to you to choose to understand the world from God's perspective, since God is the one making the decisions and determining our destiny. And the more that we are serving that one and not serving any of those others or our ego's addiction to paranoid thinking, then the more benefit we will get from this time period, which will be very short. We are in a very accelerated moment, as I think everyone realizes. And because the speed of time is accelerating, the speed of our own capacity to grok must accelerate. Our capacity to understand more deeply than our ego can do, if we are to ride the wave and not be submerged by it. So I begin with the same paradigm as is valid for, from what I know, all of the major spiritual traditions, which is that God is one and that God is all. Whatever seems to be appearing as a world separate from that infinite consciousness is an illusion only to the particles of God consciousness that identify with the bodies they are animating and have become lost in their own finite fantasies and narratives about reality based on a false identification with the animal body. The spiritual journey begins when we recognize that it is a waste of our precious time to live a life based on satisfying the appetites of the animal body, and to try to give it a sense of security from its imagined fears and anxieties, and its desires, and its foolish attempts to gain power, fame, prestige, whatever else, not realizing that we are within a higher order that determines all of that, based on our goodness and our lovingness, our loving kindness, and our willingness to surrender and be harnessed by that intelligence that alone can guide us accurately through life. So the present moment demonstrates that the ego, if it tries to run the world by itself, separate from a connection to that supreme being, if the particle wants to lead a particular life and does not want to surrender to the supreme whole, the infinite intelligence, it's going to make a mess of things. And collectively, the egos have made a mess of the world to the point that our existence is in the most precarious position it has ever been. And humanity as a species is now threatened with being extinguished from the universe. It's not simply a pandemic that has brought that about. That's just the cover story. The world was already in collapse, and already the drums of wars were sounding and being already fought on many fronts. And the fragmentation of order and the degradation and all of the corruption that everyone knows about, that I hope I will not have to mention again in this retreat. But that's the situation in which we are meeting. All of that has come about because egos have detached from not just the belief in God, because belief is not relevant, but the connection to the source of that intelligence. So what I would like to indicate to everyone, if you don't already have complete awareness of this, is that each soul is a holon. It is a particle that holographically contains the whole. But because it's a particle only, it contains the whole in an incoherent fashion. It's only the absolute whole that can clarify the deep nuances that make all the difference, that enable a reuniting of all of the particles into unity again. And that unity can only come through love of the source of the particles' own existence. Because the particles cannot love one another. They are competing with one another. They are all too often envious of one another, jealous, angry, projecting negativity on the other. And so at the level of the ego, there cannot be unity or love or wisdom. And therefore, if we do not jettison the ego mind, which is based on identification with the animal body, we cannot escape the psychology of the ego, which is self-defeating and self-destructive and world-destructive. And so only a return to the infinite, blissful, loving, luminous, almighty intelligence that is the self, the one self, can save us from suffering a fate worse than extinction because of the guilt and shame that will accompany the extinction for our having failed to deliver all the beings who are in our care to safety and to a world at peace. And so it is our obligation and sacred duty to free ourselves from the chains and the prison of the ego in order to receive again the power to be able to manifest a new world.